The service delivery meeting, the final service delivery meeting of this term of council. Welcome to the Mayor. Fellow councillors, staff and public and the press. The press are the public today. I'll ask for any apologies. We have one from Councillor Lovett and Councillor Price, and Councillor Urquhart has to leave a bit early. Any further apologies? If not, somebody like to move those apologies be accepted. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Seconded, Councillor Malcolm. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Extraordinary business. Madam Mayor.
Mr Chairman, I do have one item of extraordinary business, please, and it's in regards to the ECAN funding of a public bus service. And I'm hoping that Councillor McMillan can provide an update in her capacity as Chairman of Safer Ashburton on an article that was recently in the paper.
Somebody like to move that we accept that extraordinary item? Thank you, Councillor Rollinson. Seconded, Councillor Bell. You need, what is the decision you hope to, urgency reason for it?
Chairman, it is the final meeting of service delivery and it's to provide an update to Council in light of a recent media statement and just to get it on the record for this triennium.
Thank you. Well, all in favour that we accept this as 5.4? Please say aye. Contrary, carried. Declarations of interest. Confirmation of the minutes. Page 1. Any changes, Councillor McMillan?
I've got page 2. So 6.2.3, the EA Network Centre, is a new inflatable toy for the pool. I thought it was for the stadium. Is that correct?
You are correct. It is for the stadium, not for the pool.
You amend your minutes for that? Page 3. No changes. Somebody like to move those minutes be accepted as true and correct? Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Seconded, Councillor Bell. Any discussion? If not, all in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. 5.1. ECAN consent review. Impact on ADC consents. Welcome, Mr Guthrie. Any questions to Mr Guthrie? Obviously all read the reports. Councillor Reveley.
Yeah, no, I've read the report. No, I think it's a very good move. It's an essential service. You need those wells, and I think it's a correct way to go around this. You don't need to be drawn into the process for a long period of time to find out you're going to miss out in the finish. So let's try at the start. So I'll move the recommendation as written.
Councillor Bryan.
I will second that, Mr Chair.
Any discussion? Councillor Brown.
Just following on from Councillor Reveley, we're only retaining one well, are we? Not wells?
Yeah, just to clarify, it is just one well. Yeah.
Madam Mayor.
Mr Chairman, I apologise, I'm tardy with my question, but it's in relation to consent 200185, the Ashburton River Road, Methven, Springfield. The low flow conditions will apply to the abstraction in relation to the use of dairy washdown water. It surprised me that the Methven Springfield water supply is used for dairy washdown. I'm wondering if you could just help me understand that, please.
Yeah, it was, through the chair, it was a requirement when we did our consent, when it was renewed a number of years ago. And they wanted us to specifically identify that as a use. So it is one of the few consents that actually has it identified as part of the use for the water that we take. And I suspect that's possibly why it's been identified for this process. But as officers, we don't believe that's entirely appropriate.
No further discussion? If not, I'll put the two paragraphs in the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Page 15, 5.2, request for Stockwater Ashburton Lyndhurst Irrigation Limited. Mr Guthrie, any questions, or would you like to add anything to your report?
Through the Chair, I would just like to point out, so this report was first prepared for a few meetings ago, but we had a delay while we were consulting with Arawhenua. So at the time that this report was developed, we didn't have the Water Race Advisory Group, and the question was asked prior to this meeting, should this matter have gone via that group? I've reflected on that. If we look at the terms of reference, in my view, the terms of reference for the group, it is to oversee a trial. This is actually more of a permanent assignment of water, so I still believe it's operational in nature and it's appropriate it comes to this committee directly.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Is there a risk around this if we give this water to one organisation? We're setting a precedent and we'll immediately have more requests for our water to be given away?
Through the Chair, I would suggest it will be a precedent, but in terms of the level at which we are setting a precedent, it's at a very basic level. Some years ago, we had early discussions with the irrigation companies about providing them with a stock water component, and that as part of those transfers, we were potentially going to be giving them water as well as part of the exchange. Under this arrangement, we are simply transferring the stock water component only. So it's sort of certainly better than some of the early discussions we were having.
Councillor Reveley.
Yeah, I think this is brilliant. We've been looking to get something started. This is a good number of years ago that we first started talking about this, and so Andy would have had all sorts of numbers go through his head over this time. I think this is wonderful. We will be next week talking about a stock water strategy and a few other things. I think this sets it great. I'm just not sure how much water is actually going down through there, but it could be 10 times that amount of water to use, possibly 40 litres at the very most. We know that there's only 20 litres a second goes out from to do that Spaxton scheme, which runs from Pudding Hill down to the RDR and right to Rakaia. They've got spare water at 20 litres a second. So this is a great start to see where we go with the rest of the district. So, yeah, very happy with it. Quite happy to move it when we get that far.
Councillor Brown.
If he's happy to move, I'm happy to second it.
And we've got another question yet from Councillor Urquhart.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. The fact that it's probably going to set a precedent, are we wise to have the full amount of 79 litres, or would it be better to perhaps go with option 3 and reduce it a little bit, so as we do have some negotiation for other maybe applications down the track, that we're just not going to willy-nilly dish out what the figure is that they're already getting.
So just to clarify, so the option 3, the smaller amount was based on only providing water, enough water to service the customers that stock water customers that currently sit in that area. My view of that is that we are trying to provide an enabling service for the whole area of the irrigation scheme. And if we are serious about being able to, potentially with the irrigation companies becoming an option instead of the open race service, we really have to give them the flexibility to be able to provide it across all of their customers.
No further questions? I think it's a good move. In in the future, the council may be able to divest itself from that area for stock water completely. And if it costs us 79 litres a second, it's a lot cheaper than the rate, that's contribution that's gone into keep the open race running. Councillor Revley?
Yeah, no, move recommendation 5.2.2 as written.
Councillor Brown, you
I'll
second
second the
it?
recommendation. Want to speak to it?
Yes.
Yeah, in the report, it's a good report, and it says that stock water is the use. It's not irrigation, it's stock water. So that's what it's going to be used for. That's what that water's used for now. So it's continuing that use. It's more efficient use. The report also says it's covering 25,000 hectares, where the Cumex, and it'll be Cumex that use that water now. This is litres per second, where it was Cumex per second before. So that those Cumex are available for something else yet to be determined. And also says in the report that not all Ashburton and Lyndhurst irrigation shareholders use the races at the moment, and they don't. They didn't want the open races, so they were closed down, and they've been using well water, deep well water. So some of them will convert from those deep wells back to the stock water in the pipe, because it'll be a more efficient way of delivering it. And it's a bit like the internet, going from a copper cable to updating to a fibre. More and more people will join it because it's more efficient. It's a better use of the network. So I support the recommendation.
No opposing views, therefore we don't ask for the mover to have a right of reply. So I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. 5.3, Heki O'Hines Water Enhancement Trust Funding Request. Thanks, Alistair. Mr Guthrie. Mr Guthrie has written the report, but it's a reply to a letter from the trust, in that it's not Mr Guthrie's project to actually push this forward. He's written the report in explanation of the letter.
Mr Chairman, may I just seek clarification on that comment though? Was Mr Guthrie not the council representative at the MAR governance group prior to the formation of the Hines Heki Water Enhancement Trust?
Through the chair, yes, I certainly was. And I'm happy to answer any general questions about MAR, but I haven't got the pleasure of being to the more recent discussions. That's all.
He's not on the trust, is he? Madam Mayor?
So in response to the officer, I have been the representative on that committee, and at the recent meeting I did share with the committee that I felt there was a gap in the knowledge of the members of this council table, because we missed some of the learnings that seem to have been accumulated for the last couple of years while the MAR governance were leading that trial, and there seemed to be some gaps, which is why it was useful to have your report. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just through you, I'm struggling to find in the report the economic benefit to the district in this. The money's coming from economic development, which we rate for economic development. So if we're spending 125,000 out of that fund, I would like to know the benefit to the district economically from doing this. There is nothing in this report that I can see around that.
Through the chair, if you direct you to the financial implications, I did take an extract out of the PGF fund application that the group have lodged, and they've indicated that the preliminary business case has estimated the increase in community cost of meeting relevant Plan Change 2 targets without anticipated MAR benefits will be somewhere in the order of 370 million. So that was why we drew the connection with the economic development.
Councillor Revley?
Okay, I'll state right before I start, I'm opposing what goes on here. I was hoping we were actually going to see a little bit more of the business case which was submitted. We haven't seen that. we also haven't seen that the farmers or anyone else other than the ratepayers have put money into this. So that disturbs me that we've got this far down the line and we still aren't identifying any beneficiaries. We've had no request to start up a rating district of anything. I think we're just putting our hand in our pocket. This council's been exceedingly generous with the many millions of cubic metres of water. Every 2 seconds, there's another cubic metre of water goes through there. This is 365 for 5 years. We'll damn near fill the Klondike Pond. So there's a massive amount of water already gone from, all right, unused stock water, but it's still gone from the system. And I believe that we should have farmers or those people more directly responsible and beneficiaries paying to run this. No request has started, so I believe we keep handing out money from a source which is not direct. I believe we're going to do the wrong things, and at the finish of it, I will be opposed. I'll be a vote against it.
Councillor Brown?
Does this funding request, when it is enacted, will answer Councillor Everly's questions? The result of this will answer his questions as to who benefits, how much it's going to cost, where the water's coming from. This is the start. And as the report also says, if it doesn't happen, if we don't get Maher in this district, that particular district, it's going to cost 370 million in lost production. That's about a quarter of our 1.9 billion, which was in today's paper, economic GDP of this district. Do we want that to happen? I don't think so.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Something that seems to be missing in the background is that this pilot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Guthrie, this pilot started as a request from the Zone Committee. And the Zone Committee is a joint committee between ECAN and Council have been party to it, and central government saw benefit. Central government actually provided funding and said, what a great idea, and this pilot is now being copied in other places. My understanding is this is a New Zealand first and we are the front runner. Am I correct, Mr. Guthrie?
Through the Chair, yes, you are correct. And if I may, I just want to point to the fact that the irrigation companies have invested quite a bit of their time and their cost in the project to date. So they certainly haven't been sitting back waiting for this to be paid for by others. They've been putting their money where their mouth was, so to speak.
And supplementary, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor Reveley's point where he says he can only see council putting their hand in their pocket, on page 23 of the report, have I read correctly that there will be funding coming from ECAN, from Fish and Game, from Mayfield Hines Valletta, so it's not just council, is that correct, Mr. Guthrie?
Yes, through the Chair, that's correct.
Councillor Brown?
Mr. Chair, I see it just as an bridging finance as far as I'm concerned. It is a first in this country. I'm living on that side of the river and I follow it just by interest, with interest. I can certainly see the benefits what's happening. Also, there's a big financial part what follows if we're doing it right. So I certainly will support this recommendation as it stands.
Councillor Brown?
I'll move the recommendation as is.
And I will
Yeah, Councillor Brown seconded
and I
it.
will second that.
Any discussion?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. Happy to support the recommendation. There are some very talented people around the table, and the topic of who will be paying long term is not something that is lost on the committee. But right now they are hamstrung with the efforts they are trying to make. So I think that this will go a long way in enabling them to move towards a long-term solution. So happy to support the recommendation.
Yes, as the chair, I also support it. When we started, it was a 5-year trial. So what are we into, about year 3, is it? 4, is it? So, I mean, when the question of funding, long-term funding, this is what the trust has to come up with at the end of the trial. So this will be something that will be brought to us as hopefully not wanting ratepayers. It'll be the district as a whole will have to support it.
Mr Chairman, did you just make a comment about what the rating's going to be? Is that your intention?
No, it'll be the beneficiaries. And who's the beneficiary? Everybody. Councillor Ellis?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. On that argument, I'd like to accidentally, if someone knocked down the power pole outside your house and EA Networks came in and knocked on your door and said, you are the beneficiary of us reinstating that, we asked you to pay, not the person who knocked it down, I hope you would be happy with that, because to me that argument doesn't stand. This is all about mitigation. We're mitigating problems that have happened in a certain area of our district, and those people who have caused that problem and those who are going to benefit from it, to me, should be given a targeted rate. Shouldn't be the general ratepayer funding this. I definitely disagree if it coming from economic development. We've just appointed a new economic development officer. Someone may knock on his door tomorrow with a fantastic suggestion for this area that we need to put a little bit of money in with proven economic benefits, and suddenly we've spent the money on this. So I am opposed to this unless it is a targeted rate.
Councillor Rollinson?
Thank you. I approach it with caution, and the reason is also because although it's easy to say we're all beneficiaries, at this point it is in a targeted area, and I therefore would like to, there's two things I'd like to see, is better reporting back from the Trust to the Council to keep us more informed, and also in the longer term some form of user beneficiary pay.
Councillor Everly?
Yeah, no, I see it as economic development. I'd hope by now, this is nearly 3 years down the track, that we would have already seen a request to start a rating district, or those sort of things starting to come onto the table. We're well into this. There will be a requirement for considerably more water, so that ought to all be also started. Where is the extra water going to come from? And so this is excess stock water, but there will be water, and it won't be stock water the next time round. So the forward thinking, I would hope that that was there. So I see this is just behind this is sitting behind something, and hopefully that new group that's formed is going to get their heads in front of it quick enough that when the 2 years runs out, and if the money's run out from the fund, from the big fund, if they get it, that they have somewhere to go. So there's some urgent work needed, because I'm same as Councillor Ellis. If there's a project comes up that really wants to support it, where are we going to get the money? And this is something that's been ongoing and will be ongoing for many years to get sorted. So I'm opposed to it.
I'll point out on page 23, at the end of the first paragraph on Dr. Painter's letter to the Mayor, explains that this is project assessment, and the longer term grant funding is obviously, when the trial is finished, this trust has to have how they're going to fund it in the long term. Grants are an interim reason till they're still assessing. We started with the site of Valletta, and they've got other small sites that they're assessing how the MAR project works. And I can see it being expanded between the Ashburton and the Rakaia in the long term too, because there is plumes of high nitrates out there.
All I say, just let those plans start. They're talking about exactly what needs done. Let them get started. Long-term plans are exactly what we said, long-term plans. If you want to start a rate, you need at least 3 years lead-in. So the message is out there. That committee needs to start working hard to get something done, because the money that's come from ECAN, I actually, as a farmer, pay rates on that to do that same job. Here in this district, we pay economic development for something. When it was put in and explained to us way back when we started paying it, was for something different to this.
No further discussion? I'll put the motion...
Right, a reply?
Oh, sorry.
Did you light on, did you or not?
Mr Chairman, as your representative on the HHWET, I just wanted to assure those who are asking about a targeted rate that the conversation is still in a very, very early stage, but it has been suggested, remembering that both ECAN and ADC are at that committee, that Council, Ashburton District Council, is not the correct vehicle for that, but the discussion is being had.
Councillor Brown, right a reply?
Yeah, if this MAR is successful, and let's hope it is, it will let the Hinds catchment carry on business. Not as usual, but carry on business. There's a lot of on-farm mitigation to go on as well. So this is part of a bigger plan. And it will also, as the Mayor says, that group will determine where the funding is coming from, who's going to pay for it, and how it's going to be rated, or where the monies are coming from. To comment on Councillor Ellis's, the monies, if a good idea comes along, and there'll be no money left, this money is carried over from last 2 years. So if that good idea does come along now, there's money in this year's budget to pick up on it. So we're not cutting ourselves short.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. I'll put the motion. 5.3.2. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? I'll declare the motion carried. Page 25, activity reports. Somebody like, thanks Andy. Councillor Revley, you move they be received. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Ronson. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Welcome, Jill. Anything to add to your report?
No, thank you.
Any questions?
Please.
Oh, Councillor Brown, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jill, you went to the refugee resettlement Hui, and it talks about the services and facilities that they will need. Is there much to come out of that? Going forward, do we need to change things for refugees, or are we doing all we need to do now in the library?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we need to have foreign language material, as well as the ESOL, the English as a Second Language learning stuff that we have, and we really need to beef that collection up. I think we need to look at other languages and having works in those languages. It's something we've never attempted before, but I think the time is right to do it now.
No questions? Thank you. That must have been a good report. Welcome, Tanya, Ashburton Museum. Anything to add to your report?
No, not today.
Any questions from the councillors? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Just one question, and that is, how often do you do the Bertie Challenge? Is it twice a year, or is it every school holidays?
We've been doing it winter and summer, those 2 holidays.
No further questions?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry, Councillor, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Tanya. Tanya, just in regards to caring for the collections, you've commented on the work continues to prepare for a full audit of collection and evaluation of a sessions backlog. How big is the backlog, and how does one get a backlog? It's not business as usual?
I guess you inherit them.
So, thank you. So you inherit them. Were they inherited from day one? Has it been a backlog there since the museum started in the new location?
I couldn't answer that, but from when I began working there was a backlog, and since then we didn't have a collections person, as I'm sure you all know, but we do now, and so that's why there's so much more reporting and activity in that area of museum operations.
No further questions? Thank you, Tanya. EA Network Centre.
Richard.
Welcome, Richard. You got anything to add to your report?
Yeah, through the chair, just that we've experienced a very busy week this week with the hockey tournament in town and all of the schools bringing their teams in for swims. They've been very, very pleased with their visits to the centre and say that we should be very proud of our centre.
I've got one question. I see the sprinkler repairs start on the 26th of August. You getting through them all right?
Through the chair, correct. They actually started this week. The builder's there and framing up all the new stuff that needs to be done, but they are tracking along nicely.
Councillor Brown.
In the minutes, we talked about the pool inflatables. We're talking about the pool inflatables here again. Are they two different inflatables or are they the same one?
Through the chair, no, that is indeed actually a typo. It's the stadium inflatable that it's referring to, the large scale one that's coming into the stadium.
No further questions? Thank you, Richard. We're rattling through them today. Open spaces. Welcome, David. Message must have got through, not to waste time. Anything to add to your report?
Probably a couple of things here. The Biodiversity Working Group, you would have noticed in the paper, had a successful bombing seed thing down at Wakanui Beach during the week. The second thing is that we have started on the playground at Camrose up in Methven, playground equipment being installed. And the third one, public conveniences, the toilets at Argyle Park have been installed and the roof is being put on place at this very moment, and boxing being laid to concrete, and hopefully the toilets will be up and running next week sometime.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Just under the Wakanui Beach thing, there's been some unusually high tides over the last 6 weeks or so. Any damage to any of the plantings that happened down there? 'Cause,
Nothing that has been noticeable at this stage, but we are concerned with the salt water on the plants, but I think that probably the water has drained away quite quickly, so probably hasn't had an effect on it at this stage. Yep.
Councillor Rollinson.
Thank you. With the sports tournaments on here at the moment, David, yesterday I was on Elizabeth Street right down by the entrance into the domain, and there was cars for miles parked on every street they could, and I just wondered why the gate wasn't allowing them onto the old tennis court area to park for those who are at the hockey. They were all pouring out there, and I just immediately thought, well, last year it was open.
Yeah, sorry, I can't really answer that question. I thought it was open, and obviously the organisation committee haven't been in touch with us. Normally we give them a key so they can park on the netball courts, and they used to use what's known as the old camping ground, picnic ground area for parking. That was mainly used by the teams that were coming down with their vans to give them a shorter distance for taking the equipment in. But I wasn't aware that they weren't using it, the old tennis courts, for parking.
Well, I know it finishes tomorrow, but I guess it would be handy if it was open.
Councillor Brown.
Just on the Biodiversity Working Group, they met, they talked about the submission, or the discussion, the document. Are they putting a submission in? Is a submission being developed?
Yes, submission's being developed, and I think it'll be going to the FABS meeting next week.
Good, thanks. And just one other question, public conveniences, the Rakai toilets, what sort of progress have we got with them? How's that going?
We've got a meeting tomorrow. Craig Goodwin is being the project manager of that particular project, and we'll be sending interests for buildings of construction of it. There's also community consultation, working on consultation process with the Rakai people. That will be discussed at our meeting tomorrow afternoon. Neil, have you got anything to add?
No, that's correct. Through the chair, we have initiated the project and we've got a whole plan being developed, and as we say, it started last week, and with another meeting due tomorrow to progress.
Who's the meeting with tomorrow?
Who's included in the meeting? Perhaps Craig can answer?
Oh, Craig's here, is he?
Hi, councillors. Yeah, we've just got a meeting tomorrow. It's we're looking at developing a registrations of interest paper so we can get the right kind of people in to build the toilet. So the meeting tomorrow is around finalising the scope and finalising that registration of interest paper. We've got a number of dominoes in place ready to fall. It's looking pretty good. We need to acquire our resource consent before we can secure the funding agreement, and our deadline for that is in November. So things are progressing well and looking good at this stage.
So the meeting's not with the public then? It's a private meeting, is it?
No, that is correct. It is internal. It is with staff, and yeah, and it's about pulling everything together, finalising our plans and getting on with it.
Through you, Mr Chairman, just to confirm that last point, the plans for consultation are still in draft form. So as soon as those plans have been confirmed, we'll let both the community and council know of the approach to that engagement.
And if I can add, this is just developing the design, so once we get some information on the design, then we can consult with the people to show them what we're proposing. So that's when the consultation will start, once we have a picture of what we're planning.
No further questions? Anything else for Mr Askin? Stockwater. Same man, different subject. No comment? Questions? Thank you. Solid Waste, welcome Craig.
Thank you, Chair.
Anything to add to your report?
Yeah, just one thing that I should add is that on Monday, Councillor Brown, as your representative, attended the Canterbury Landfill Joint Committee and the Canterbury Joint Waste Committee meetings in Christchurch. So at the Canterbury Joint Waste Committee meeting, in that the funding for Canterbury-wide projects was discussed, and Councillor Brown asked if I could just give a quick brief. So with your permission, if I can just a couple of minutes and just sort of go over what went on at that meeting.
Yes, that'll be fine.
Thank you. So there is a contestable fund run by the Canterbury Joint Waste Committee, and it is $112,000 or so a year. Our council contributes about nearly $7,000. It's $6,000 odd dollars towards that. There are, I'll just find the list, sorry, paperwork everywhere. So in the coming 12 months, and the committee approved 5 projects. One is the Wasteman's Collaborative Projects Fund, and that's a contribution to nationwide projects around getting uniform messaging out around recycling across all councils across the country. That was $7,500. There's a compostable food packaging at events project that's been running over the last couple of years, and it's in its 3rd and final year. There was $20,275 approved for that. And a new project, Refill NZ, is looking at installing water bottle refilling stations into cafes and things in the business in the city, and if that proves successful, then it can be extended to the wider region, into district councils like ours. Another one is called the MedSlav project, which is looking at single-use medical devices in hospitals, where currently they waste a lot of money, where they basically use these devices. They're non-invasive devices, things like moon boots and stuff and things like that. They spend a lot of money on, they get used once and then gone. So this project gathers those things up, refurbishes them, and then sells them back to the hospitals, saving everybody a lot of money. It's a really good project and saves a lot of stuff going to landfill that shouldn't. And there's one, and that was $11,000, and then there's one final project, the Akara French Fest, which is a small festival similar to the Multicultural Bite, and so they got $3,738 to assist with that festival, and it was around the waste management within that festival. Yeah. So there was just a quick brief rundown of the funding that was approved at that committee meeting. So I'm happy to take any questions, and if Councillor Brown's got anything else he wants me to elaborate on.
No, I think you did it. You did a great job, Craig, in summarising all that. But one thing at the committee, there was $112,000 to spend, but only about $60,000 was spent because there weren't many applications, I suppose you'd say. So anyone's allowed to apply, I think, and we might want to advertise it down here next year because this year's finished. Am I correct?
Yeah, we will do. We'll make a point of promoting that contestable fund this year to our Ashburton district and seeing if we can get some local projects going.
Councillor McMillan.
I was just going to comment, it may be worth the Multicultural Bite applying for something similar in Ekaraki.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. With the multicultural bike running, will there be also continuous of the services for the other event that is happening on the same day? Because we have noticed that the collection is well organized on the other side, but on the other side it's not. So are they all together in one day, organized by the EnviroWaste?
Yeah, so the work that we do is around providing recycling and waste services to that event, and we provide that free of charge as it is now. If you wanted to make an application to that fund, the criteria is that you have to prove that waste is going to be diverted from landfill, and that further down the track, or the wider outcome is there's going to be a benefit to the region, and that because it's a regional fund. So, and that's one of the challenging things for a small council, is to come up with a project that actually has regional benefit.
Okay.
Councillor Brown?
As an example, the Timaru, and you probably might have seen on TV, where they dismantled mattresses and pulled it all apart and ended up with all this recycling out of it. That was funded from those monies. So there's an example.
No further question? Councillor Rollinson?
Not a question for Craig, but just the Keep New Zealand Beautiful Clean-up Day, which is being held on Saturday. I know the local group would love to see, they've put the challenge out to some councillors, they'd love to see some councillors there leading by example in their clean-up, which starts at 10 o'clock in the West Street car park.
No further questions? Thank you. Shamal is here too as an engineer in Neil's team. Three Waters project. Any questions? Councillor Brown.
I've seen the bore heads have been raised, where before they were buried and out of sight, out of mind. They're now raised, and I know the project hasn't finished. There's temporary fencing around. Are they going to be permanently fenced so people can't fiddle with them?
Through the chair, yes, there will be permanent fences once we have installed the concrete platforms and all that. Then we will install the permanent structures.
Yep.
Councillor Everly.
Okay, is there a time frame that you actually get to a conclusion? Because originally we said we were going to have it cleaned up by now. You've had the one meeting, nearly due for a second one. Is there a time frame where you think this first part of that group will be completed?
So we have completed 5 bores. We have raised 5 bores. 2 other bores require sanitary sealing, and might have mentioned last time we need specialist contractors from Christchurch to do that. So they're quite busy in Christchurch. They will, just today I got an email saying they'll be free in October. So they'll do those sealing in October, as well as the Rikaya bore. We cannot raise it at the moment because we require resource consent. So Andy is currently applying for resource consent. So once that's approved, then we can also raise the Rikaya bore. And while all that is happening, I'll be installing the concrete platforms and installing the fences.
Your supplementary on stock water races. Stay on stock water races. When is the stormwater strategy going to keep the stormwater away from stock water? We're looking for quality stock water. What you're putting into the creeks, several places in this last month, channels have been dug to put surface water into stock water. So at the moment we've got some very poor quality stock water. Is there ever going to be an attempt? We're talking about all the biodiversity in a stock race. But here we are putting road run or whatever happens to come down into it. Is there ever going to be anything to stop the stormwater getting in those stock races? Is that going to be a part of it?
You may have to direct that question to the roading team. I'm not aware of any particular sites that's happening at the moment, but it may be happening.
Supplementary to that, this committee, I believe, because of the nature of the people we've put on it, should be saying, well, we are looking for quality water. The irrigation company said that they want to have nothing to do with that water entering into their systems because of the testing and the poor quality of that water. So we've got stock water. If the surface water continues to go into it, we might as well not have it as, we might as well not call it stock water, because some of that water is putrid at the moment.
Councillor Brown, you got a
No, sorry.
question? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'm getting lost here. What are we talking about? Is there a certain place you're talking about? Because I'm looking at the clouds coming past.
We have a committee out there looking at some of these stock water, so the surface water, and district water management, and in amongst that, we're going to have all the ecological values and everything else which is useful, but we are allowing stormwater. It seems to be more stormwater getting into these, degrading what starts out as a very good source of water, degrading as it goes down. So I hope that committee sets out to try and have quality stock water if we're going to continue to have stock water races.
Of course, there's a conundrum, isn't there? If you've got water on the road, what are you actually going to do with it? Do you run it down the road continually use the road as a drain? And traditionally, that's what's happened. They've cut and put it into the water races. I see your point, Councillor Reveley, about the quality of the stock water. So what we hope in the long term, if water races are closed, there's still a bund left down the side of the road or in the farmer's paddock that can take surface water, sort of like a dry creek type thing, because we definitely need the water off the roads, because that's one of the biggest killers of road surface is water. So it is a conundrum. You penalise one system to benefit the other. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Just read the contract for Three Waters treatment and around the network and things, and you've sent out some draft tender documents and looking for feedback. Have you had much yet? Because this is a fairly big piece of work for whoever wins it, and we need to make sure that we get this 100% right, because it's pretty critical to this district.
So we went out for early contractor engagement. It went out to 4 contractors. I can't reveal the names right now. So we received lots of constructive and positive feedback, a few suggestions. Some of the changes we'll be making is like the initial term, it will be 5 plus 2 plus 2, altogether 9-year contract, few things on KPIs and all that. So lots of good feedback, and that's what I'm doing at the moment, incorporating all those feedback into the final tender document that I'm hoping will go out on TenderLink in 2 weeks' time. So it will be an open tender that goes out to everyone, and hoping that it will be awarded. It will be coming back to the committee, I think on 12th of December, and after that then we can award the contract.
That's good news.
I just have one correction on the first item. First item. The contract will commence early November instead of early October. So I have had the pre-commencement meeting with SEEP Construction, and that's what they have indicated. It's early November, and it will be finishing around December next year. So it's about 13 months contract.
No further questions? Thank you. Drinking water? Oh, sorry, Russell.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So with that contract taking over a year, there's obviously there'll be certain times where they'll be looking at achieving certain objectives with that, like obviously the river crossing itself. They won't want to be doing that in winter time when there's a higher risk of higher water flows and those sorts of things. So what am I asking? So they think that's timeframe's all going to be okay for them, and we're not anticipating any dramas. I know it's very early on to be asking that question, but it makes me leave with a bit more peace in mind.
So I have been involved with the program that has been developed. It has been slightly modified from the tendered program, and we have allowed for about 20 days for wet weather events. So we have taken into account flooding and all those issues. So there is a bit of leeway in the program itself. And in terms of stakeholders and communication, so we have just had a meeting this week. So we will be going out to all the stakeholders affected properties. It's not actually affected properties because it's on council and that sort of land, but it's just more traffic, more machinery and that sort of things. So someone might say it's noisy or something like that. So we will be informing everyone in the area. So we'll be doing that shortly.
Councillor Brown?
Just on that contract, what sort of money do we spend on that contract now, roughly?
So you're talking about the Three Waters
Yeah.
O&M.
O&M, yep.
Can we say that publicly at the moment?
Yeah, historically, over the last few years,
Historically, yeah.
approximately 2.5 million a year,
Oh, yeah.
give or take.
That's
Yep.
right, yep.
No further questions? Drinking water, see the generator installed at the Timor Bore. Councillor Brown?
We did have an outage at Huckatree. We haven't got an update on what happened and what have you. I presume it's back on again, because you were tankering water at one stage.
Yeah, so that was, it was a bit of an issue that we had with a bit of upgrade works that didn't go quite to plan. So they, effectively the head on one of the treatment for, items failed and wasn't operating the way it should have, and that led to the tankering over the weekend. My understanding is it's all been returned to normal now. There's certainly no issues with it now, but they're still negotiating with the supplier over the costs around that.
6.9, wastewater. Councillor Ellis?
Norwest, whereabouts are we talking? Northwest, should I say?
Through the chair, that's the Carters Road, Ellens Road, Farm Road block between Mill Creek and Racecourse Road.
Stormwater, 6.10. .11, district water management. No comments? Yes, as the last sentence, there was no zone committee meeting in July. Thank you. Andy, sorry, Councillor Brown.
Just on the Waterways Network Advisory Group, do the minutes of that meeting come here, or where do they go? Or do they go anywhere? Or they'll go to that group, obviously.
Good question, I'll just check on that. Yep.
And Mr Chairman, in a similar vein, biodiversity, we never got minutes either.
.12, roading. Welcome Brian and Martin.
Mr Chairman, I asked at the start of the meeting for an extraordinary item and you suggested 5.4 and we seem to have
Yeah.
missed that gap. May I, at the end of roading?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. You should have reminded me. Welcome Brian. Any questions? Maintenance renewal contracts? What, have we got an overhead coming up, have we? Mm. Councillor Brown?
Just a question on the maintenance and the maintenance contract. Yesterday I was up around the Maronan Valletta Lagmore Way trying to look for places, and I was looking at the roads. Not familiar with the area at all, so I was going on road signs. I couldn't find some road signs. They weren't there to mark a road, and some were two road signs pointing down the same road, like the wind's turned them. As the contractors going around could that be looked at to see that they're all pointing the right way and are there? Is it something that happens?
It is something that happens, and as you pointed out, they get moved quite frequently as well by wind and other means, and we have to try and keep up with these things.
I think a lot of us have done that in young days, haven't we? Changed the road signs. Any questions? We'll go over that. Road maintenance contract extension, which subject have we got on the overhead, Brian?
We'll be looking at the speed limit review, just
That's your overheads
Coming up later.
coming up later, fair enough. Sealed maintenance contract extension, any questions? Second urban bridge. Detailed business case. No comments?
Yes.
Councillor Revley.
As councillors, are we going to be allowed to see this map of where this road's actually going to go? Is there any alterations to what we first talked about a long time ago?
sorry, I'm not with you.
Well, are we going to see a full map of where the road starts and where the road finishes and where the bridge is? Is there anything that, so we're still looking just at starting at Graham's Road and coming to the end of the bridge on this end, the north end of the bridge? Is that what we're looking at with the map?
As far as the detailed business case is concerned, it's taking the whole project, looking at it again, making certain that it's in the right place at this particular point in time, not going back for consultation or anything like that, and making certain that going forward we have the economic case and benefit case all lined up so that we can get funding in the immediate future, possibly long term, depending on what the actual case comes up with.
So supplementary to that, in amongst that case, is that putting in the street lights and everything in the on the sides of the road, footpaths and all?
It's for the full roading construction at this point in time, right through to Graham's Road and linking in with Chalmers Avenue. The whole project is being assessed as to its viability going forward. Now, if we find that various aspects of it are not viable, then we possibly would pull back a little bit on that.
Yes, I've got a question. Will the councillors see the business case before it's submitted on behalf of the council?
I can't see any reason why you wouldn't, if that's what you require.
Yeah, I think it should be in the council's name, and I think it would be good if the councillors knew what we were actually proposing. No further questions there? Councillor Rollison.
Thank you. Regarding Chalmers Avenue, so will it include the obvious upgrading and the work that will need to be done on Chalmers Avenue to make it the successful carrier to and from the bridge? Will that be included in the costing?
Not in the costings for the bridge itself as a project. We will more than likely be looking seriously at Chalmers Avenue from the point of view of roading as a normal maintenance expense or renewal expense at that point in time.
Thank you. But supplementary to that, so the building of a new road going on the south side of the bridge right across to Graham's Road, that will all be factored into this business case?
It'll be factored into the business case. Whether it stays in the business case or not will depend on the economics and all that side of things.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, and it's probably a good opportunity to go back and look at the Commissioner's report, because he listed a whole lot of things that will need mitigating to make that happen, and it'd be good to tick those off while you're doing the business case, because that will help it proceed. And I mean, I know some of it was like the roundabout at Netherby and all those sorts of things, because without mitigating that, there's no point in building the bridge, because we move a problem from one place to another and those sorts of things. So I remember the Commissioner had quite a list of things that would need to be mitigated to proceed with this.
RDR Bridges. Councillor Everly.
Just a pity they couldn't have been done while Highbank was shut down. We've had gone through bulk of the winter without any water in the ditch.
Councillor Brown.
Just a small fella sitting here. The new bridges, how wide will they be if you replace them?
The new bridges will have a carriageway width of 8 metres between curbs and enough room for the curbs and guardrail situation.
Maronan Road Bridge.
Nothing further to report at this stage on that side of it.
On that.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair, Mr. Chair. So we keep talking about the handrails and the safety barriers, but my understanding was we were going to change that funny concrete curb down at ground level, which seems to be grabbing people's tyres and steering them through the handrail. Is that work happening? Has that been done, that concrete step or whatever
As part
you
of
wanna-
the Maronan Road upgrade, or the bridge upgrade, we're removing the existing curb and handrails and putting back a safety barrier system. All right, no curbing.
Planned work on state highways. There for our information. What's the MSL at West Street Rail Crossing?
Main South Line.
The Chertsey Crossing certainly can do with some repairs. Getting rougher and rougher. No questions? At the Chertsey Rail Crossing? Have we got a bypass already? Councillor Brown?
Right, just on State Highway, I presume someone's let them know that for coming onto the Rakaia Bridge from the north end, left-hand side, is a gap. Presume they know about it, State Highway or NZTA. I would like to think they know about it, but it's outside of our patch. The Rakaia River Bridge is not ours, and the north side of it is certainly Selwyn's, not ours. Okay. Snap, send, solve, impossible. You cannot stop there and take a photo.
NZTA have got cameras there straight above that gap. So, yeah.
Should be able to see it.
612.7, speed limit review. Martin, have you got something for us?
Can't read that particular one.
Yeah. Well, if we postpone that until you... They'll be able to get it. Yes. Yes, thanks, Donna. We'll go to your 5.3.
Which is now 6.12.8. Mr. Chairman, you might recall, in fact, you joined me when you and I went to visit the ECAN commissioners, and we did a presentation on behalf of Ashburton District Council. We spoke to our submission, raising concerns about no public transport in the Ashburton District. One of the challenges they gave you and I was that the Ashburton District is one of the few that isn't accessing a public transport fund for community vehicles. So Councillor McMillan, as chairperson of Safer Ashburton, has kindly been pursuing that, and I was wondering if Councillor McMillan could provide this committee with an update.
Thank you, and yes, I can. So as part of the Safe Communities accreditation that we received earlier this year, as part of that review, we were asked to look into what kind of community transport or public transport there could be in the district. So our steering group is now meeting bi-monthly, and we have set up a couple of working groups, and one of them is on the Community Vehicle Trust. So we have had one meeting on the 1st of August, just with interested parties, so there's about 5 of us. A week later, I met up with Isabel Bowman, I think her last name is, from ECAN, to hear how we could set up a community vehicle trust. And then last Monday, I went into Christchurch to ECAN, to the Community Vehicle Trust AGM, where all the community vehicle trusts get together and do a bit of a report on and a catch-up. I wrote 3 pages of notes, and then we've had another meeting with our working group this morning on how to proceed. So at this stage, we are looking at doing a survey to see what we need. We know that there's already lots of services from Ashburton into Christchurch to do hospital runs. What's missing is transport from the outer line towns, so Mayfield, Hinds, Methven, Rakaia, and even Rakaia Rangatata Huts. And so now we have to get a survey together and then form a trust. The whole thing takes probably a good 12 months to get up and running, so it's not going to be a quick fix. And ECAN are there to support us with that. So that's pretty much the update. We are going to get the survey out in the next couple of weeks, and we're having another meeting in about 6 weeks' time. If there's anything else, just...
Councillor Reveley.
Yeah, where will the trust be funded from?
So ECAN put some funding in. I think it's about $10,000. So it's half ECAN funded, half NZTA funded, and it's within that rating that we're rated on as well.
So because Mid-Canterbury could actually have, there's a facility there with ECAN to rate each district for transport.
Yep.
So if this gets up and running and it looks like it needs more, that fund could, just a submission to ECAN's annual plan or long-term plan, could get a rating fund started.
Yep.
Councillor Brown.
The survey you're going to do, who are you going to survey? Who are they going to survey?
So as many people as we can in the district. So we're not quite sure how we're going to get the survey out. I can imagine a lot of it will be done on social media or through papers, etc. It'll be a survey monkey, so it's something that you have to do online.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What exactly are we trying to do? Are we going to get public transport? What has been tried before doesn't work. What exactly are we looking at? I'm a wee bit lost.
No, it's fine. So the community vehicle trusts, there's a lot of them in Canterbury. There's nothing in mid-Canterbury. All of them are quite different. So there's the North Canterbury Vehicle Trust, which is run out of Rangiora. They have about 5 or 6 minivans that they use to transport people into hospital, shopping trips, etc., etc. There's one in Cheviot. It's got one car that they use to bring people down to outpatients. So for us, a lot of that has already been done already by different organisations in Ashburton. So our view is that we can help people from Rakaia get into a hospital appointment in Ashburton, get someone to EA Networks for their exercise class, people who don't normally drive or who just want a bit of company. So it's not a bus service, it'll be a minivan. We are thinking set days, so maybe Tuesday from Rakaia coming in, Wednesday from Methven. It's really in the planning stages at the moment, and we've got to work out what the need is as well. So that's why the survey is going to help us with that.
So is it volunteers who are driving this?
Yes.
Or
Yes, so it's all volunteer drivers.
with P licenses?
Nope, don't need them.
You don't need them?
Nope.
Okay.
And do the people pay at all towards the service?
They will do, so it will be a minimum charge. So we thought $5 a trip for an adult, $2 for a child. But again, it will go on need and what people are wanting.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Could I take this opportunity to thank Councillor McMillan as the Chair of Safe Ashburton for the work she's done thus far. It's good, as Councillor Brown mentioned today, when there's funding out there, it's good to see our council actually going out there and applying. And while it's not directly from this council, Councillor McMillan, being in the role of Chair of Safe Ashburton, has run with it. It fits with their vision. And I know that ultimately we asked if we could be on the 30-year plan for public transport. The challenge was put back to us, and can I thank Councillor McMillan for picking up the challenge and running with it.
No further questions? You're quite happy with the result that you've got? We'll revert back to 6.12.7, speed limit review. Welcome Brian and Martin this time.
Yeah. Basically with the overheads that you'll see, the solid colour is the current posted speed limit. So there's a key off to the side. So any solid colour is what it currently is. And any dotted colour is what we're suggesting that we could possibly move to. Some are based on our own observation around the urban areas. Others are based on feedback that we've had come back in from people wanting changes. It's entirely up to council as to what we do, if we do anything at all. So we'll go through the various areas. We're looking at the top end of Ashburton there, western end. We're looking at the smaller cul-de-sac subdivisions, things of that nature that are virtually enclosed in themselves, and suggesting that they should be, say, 30k per hour. In the likes of Carter's Road, Racecourse Road, Carter's is currently 70, all that area where the underlying colour is yellow is currently 70. We're looking where the green is there to go to 50, and where the orange is to go to 60. Bring up the next.
Oh, sorry, I got a question. Councillor Ellis.
So just clarifying, you've got Macaray Place there and all those other little streets, there's those little ones there. So are we going to have to go out and put road signs up at the start of each of those cul-de-sacs? And I know those ones, they're barely 50 metres long, and then they're a dead end. Are we going to put a 30-kilometre-an-hour sign up on all those little wee cul-de-sacs all around the district? And so what cost would be involved in that? Because I struggle to see how you'd actually do 50 kilometres an hour in one of those, because by the time you got to 50, you'd be through the fence at the far end anyway.
Yeah, as we've said, it's just a suggestion at this stage that, and you're right, we would have to put 30k's if we did go to 30k's. Some, as you've suggested, you'd have to be a speed merchant to get up to the speed 50 anyway, so then possibly we just leave them as they are.
Try the next one.
So going across to the north-eastern side of town, same applies, the same colour schemes. The major roads like Company Road, Seafield Road, Smithfield Road, we'd go to 60, and everything else would come down to 50 in this area. With the possible couple of exceptions there that might be down to 30. Not sure about that.
I've got a question. Seafield Road from, is it the Bridge Street corner? Heading out Seafield Road, is he going to bring that down even further lower than 70? Is that be down to
So Seafield Road from Bremner's Road through to just past Bridge Street would be 50, whereas it's currently 70. And then from there out, it would become 60.
Can you slide the map? How far down does it go to 60?
Out to just past the airport.
Just another comment there on that one. With the new entrance to the cemetery on that bottom part of Seafield Road, I think if you were dropping one section of it to 60, you'd drop the whole lot, or 50, or drop the whole lot, because that's going to, once the cemetery opens, there's going to be quite a lot of traffic turning in that new.
It is 50.
That is, we're dropping that to 50, through to just past the intersection with Bridge Street.
Mr.
Or not.
Chairman, may I just ask about Albert Street? So am I reading the map correctly that we're reducing the speed outside the Christian school from 70 to 50, is that right?
Down to 60. 50 outside the Ashburn.
I'm pleased with that.
Christian school.
Yes, and as we go back and look at Netherby School on Brucefield Ave, so what has that speed limit reduced to? 30. So what is the speed limit outside other urban schools?
The speed limit would remain pretty much at the 50k.
With the exception of Netherby, which is 30.
Well, the Netherby one seems to be in a little cul-de-sac type area. We didn't look at the schools in particular. We're looking at more at the cul-de-sac subdivisional type areas that we have.
Yep, next one. Oh, sorry. Councillor Malcolm.
Surely through you, Mr. Chairman, Brian, the schools, you've got the Christian school. Wouldn't school zones apply with that too at the same time? So you're down to 40k?
Who says that you have to go past the school at 40k?
If it's introduced as a school zone, you can have a school zone though, can't you? At 40 kilometres
It doesn't
an hour.
indicate, there's nothing legal about a 40k sign outside a school.
What?
Unless you have it fully gazetted and you've got a 40k per hour sign there. Just because you've got a speed zone, school speed zone sign flashing doesn't mean to say that you have to drop your speed. You're asked to because it's a school speed zone area, but
Selwyn, just supplementary, Selwyn district seem to put 40 kilometres school zone when children are present on their signs, right?
that's correct.
Yep.
But there's nothing to allow the police to give you a ticket if you're doing 50, 60, 70k past their school.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Further to Councillor Malcolm's point though, Mr. Firth, did I hear you say if it's gazetted? All of these changes you're intending will need to be gazetted, correct?
Correct, yes.
So if council has a desire that it wishes for schools to be 40 kilometres now when children are present, now is the correct time to have that conversation and ensure that it is gazetted. Is that correct?
Sorry, if you say when children are present, we can't do that. We can make it 40k and get it gazetted, and it then becomes 40k at all times. It doesn't just when children are there.
Are these speed limits, we'll have a workshop on them, will we, or what's the position?
At this stage, if you're reasonably comfortable with what we're proposing, we would just put it out to the public to come back with submissions. As we did last time, if you recall, 3, 4, 5 years ago, we went out to the public, advertised all round, asked for submissions to come in, and at the end of the day, there was a council 3-man panel set up to hear those submissions, and they made the final decision, and at that point we then had the particular speed limits changed.
Councillor Brown.
You presented this map at the roading reference groups, and they had comments on it. Has it, that was 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, Has this changed since then, or is it still the same? So you've put...
Sorry, based around our own feelings and also the wishes of the community out there, that the letters that we've had come in.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Brian. Just Maronan Road, could you show that? I saw it before, but it's gone. So it's 50 till the end of the domain, or is it? Out past the Vintage Car Club.
Yes.
There.
And then from 50 to 100 or 50 to 70?
There it is 50 to 100.
Could I suggestively go to Thews Road?
Yes, yes.
We've looked at it to go up to Thews Road and possibly include Thews Road and come back onto Henderson's Road. It's whether we leave it at 50 or try and fit in a 60 in that area. If we fit in a 60, we have to go 500 metres for the 60. That's the minimum length we can do. So that then brings us back inside the area that we want, or we have to go outside of Thews Road intersection. It just makes it a little bit awkward.
It's just a practical reason than anything else, because I notice a lot of them start slowing down from the Thews Road corner. So to me, it's a general area to slow down.
They do slow down through there. Well, in that case, it could be worthwhile looking at.
It's amazing. It stops on the Thews Road corner as well.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. I was going to bring this up when we got onto the roading reference group, but Lagmore School, I've had a lot of correspondence from them lately about the school being on a 100k site. Is there anything that you could do in the interim? Or, I mean, this is obviously going to take a while to get all these speed signs, and if they put a submission in, it might end up being too far down the track. How?
To be honest with you, as far as Lamore School is concerned, we don't think they have a problem, all right? We have been out there with members of safety groups from national organisations. We've sat there and watched the children come and go, the ins and outs of the school. We are of the opinion that approximately 80 to 90% of the children's school turn up by bus. The bus pulls up alongside a gate and a fence. There is a metre gap between the bus door and the fence, and it is on the away side of the Lamore Road, Tynwood Westfield Mayfield Road. There is also the possibility of them using a piece of land that belongs to the Education Board alongside the current school that possibly could be turned into a parking area. I'm not sure whether that is what they envisage doing or not, I'm not sure. But we've helped them out by putting quite a large car parking area out in front of the fence. There is ample room if people just use a little bit of common sense, more so than anything else.
I see, interestingly, on the consents that we get this week, there was a consent granted for the Lagmore School to dismantle a schoolhouse and turn it into a parking area. So hopefully there is some progress being made.
The correspondence that I've had is that's been 2 years in the planning, so who knows, and it's Ministry of Education who are doing that, so who knows when it will happen. And they're now saying that about 75% come by bus, which means 25% are coming by car, and a lot of the students have after school sports, etc., so they're not actually catching the bus on the way home as well. So I just don't know. I mean, you want to keep the children safe, you don't want anything to happen, and yes, I know we've
As I said,
been here
we've
and done that.
investigated this particular school. We've had requests for a period, I think, since I've been here, somewhere in the vicinity of 6 years we've been investigating the school. And over that period of time, we have put in the school zone signs,
that are operated by the principal themselves or people within the school. So they're operative generally when the school children are coming and going. Admittedly, if they're there for sporting activities, they'll be coming and going after that particular sign would be activated. But that's at the school. We've tried the Dragon Tooth arrangement. We've sealed the car park and extended it for them. We've done quite a lot of work in that for that school to assist them. And then in more recent times, we've had, as I said, a national representative from one of the safety organisations come down because we wanted to, at that stage, put in the Dragon's Teeth. And as part of that investigation for the Dragon's Teeth, they weren't very keen on supporting us at all. All right, so that is the situation we have, that in our view, as I said, we don't think the school actually has a problem.
Councillor Fave, Madam Mayor.
That's been a couple of years. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Through you to the staff, thank you very much for showing us the updates for the Ashburton urban area. I recall being at a Methven Community Board meeting and I thought they had written talking about what their concerns were, and I see you've got other headings up the top. So changes aren't just limited to the Ashburton area?
No, we're going, at this stage, we're looking a little bit at Hines, sorry, not at Hines, at Rakaia and Methven. That's Hollands Road. We're taking that the 50k further out. On Tar Bottoms Road, we're making that completely 50k. 30k in the smaller subdivisions in Oakley. And then 60 as we hit TWM and Fraser's Road. On the other side, you'll see that Johnson Street will go to 60. Wilkins Road, Carter's Terrace, around that area will be 60, and extend 60, or put a 60 in on Graham's Road out to where we show there. If you whistle off to... So the large 60 there is Mount Harding Road, Forest Drive, going to 60 round and down the foot. There is the thought that we could have extended the 60 out and linked it to Hobbs Road, but we're not 100% certain that we'd get full compliance in that sort of area. We're looking at taking the 50 on Barker's Road out and making the Camrose subdivision, etc., at 30k. And similarly coming in from the other side, extending the 50s out as opposed to making them 70 or 60.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. You just slide it back up to where the Camrose subdivision is. Are they only still going to have the one entranceway because it's growing towards it? So there is only the one.
Well, there's the two. There's one off the
Well,
state
yes,
highway.
yeah, but there's not going to be another one on the main road.
At this stage, we don't envisage that happening, but it could do.
Yes.
And
okay.
if it does come out onto Hobbs Road there,
yeah.
we would look seriously. It's not Hobbs, Holmes Road.
Yes,
yeah.
Holmes Road.
We
yeah.
would look seriously at what we need to do at that point in time.
Because then you'd take in the entranceway to the racecourse, which would also be a safety factor
And
as well.
again, you know, the racecourse, when the hop pools go in and all that type of thing as well. Yeah.
Oh. Next. Yep.
That one past the golf course there is 80 just at this stage. And as I say, we could conceivably change those.
sorry, just going back to around by the golf course on Hobbs's Road, there's a few new houses going in just by the golf course. Wondering in that area.
Be up to people to submit.
Yeah.
If local people decide they want it up or down, they'll obviously submit, and we'll have to look at what the submissions say.
So this is a starting point. If you've got objections to where we're starting, we'd like to hear them now so that we can get them out of the way. And we'll go out with what you suggest we should go out with, and then see what submissions come in.
Councillor Brown?
I seen Rikara the other day at the Road Reference Group, and it looked okay, it was good. Chertsey, could we just have a look at Chertsey to see if you changed anything there?
Just while you're bringing that up, Stuart, so were there any funds put in the long-term plan for doing it? Because obviously there's a heck of a lot of signage to change, so there will be a cost implication. So was that in the long-term plan, or are we just going to make that out of the day-to-day?
It would be met out of generally the day-to-day. The long-term plan, I don't think we just go into the speed limit side of it at all in the long-term plan. It's not something that we look at on a long-term plan sort of basis. We look at it more from the point of view of the bylaw having to be looked at every 3 years. And in that bylaw, we ask for, basically as people submit to us with letters, we take those into account. And if we get enough, because this whole exercise is quite time-consuming, quite involved, and we have to really have a number of areas that need changing or could be changed to make the whole exercise worthwhile.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, we looked at the Chertsey at the Road Reference Group, and I thought that the discussion was to remove those little brown lines and leave it as it was.
There was some thought into, this one's actually still open to discussion, so this is still on for to think about. So the other option is to extend this 50 a bit further, so yeah.
Yeah, or extend the 50 out of it, yeah,
Yes,
correct.
yep.
The other one we looked at was Lauriston, on the Line Road, I think. We didn't agree with what you had there.
You mean the lack of change, or
The lack of change.
Yes.
And I think through that intersection, you're leaving it at 100, where it's a dodgy little corner and going through the township, and there's been accidents there. I think it should be lower, but Brian was saying, but we want to do something to the road, and we thought there's a lot of money to spend on the road where lowering the speed limit may do it.
So what would you suggest there as a starting point? Would it be 60, or do you prefer, given that Line Road is a major drag into Methven from Thompson's Track, would you prefer it to be 80?
It's definitely not 100, which it is at the moment, and you can't, if you're in a truck and trailer, you couldn't do 100 safely, I don't think. You probably could, but safely you probably couldn't. And it's going through where there's houses, whatever, 60, 70 perhaps, but something like that, and then they could submit on it. Yeah.
Mr Chairman?
Yep, I can look into it.
Sorry.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Mr Chairman, through you, I note when we go to Christchurch that there's a flashing 70km/h sign at Burnham. And my understanding is that that flashes around school open, school closing times, or times, cars coming out trigger it. There you go. I'm wondering if there's something that we could install that would make it an adaptable intersection. So for the 40 weeks of the year where there is school, if there was some form of signage or some speed limit we could put in, because that's what we're trying to protect, isn't it? We're trying to protect the school and the community. Yeah. The whole community. Okay.
Yeah, to put in anything like what's at Burnham and on the State Highway, you need to have traffic coming from the side roads, and we don't have situations like that in places too often, and so it's difficult to organise a sign like that in our area.
How many more?
I think there's just 2 more towns. So there's just some minor changes in Raka. So the extension of 50 for Thompson Track and Harley's Road, it's just small extensions. And normally there will be some extension. Yep. Those, no fair. Oh, there's Lakewood.
Brian,
Yep.
light, please.
Sorry, Mount Summers is taking it out to 50 on the Ashburton Gorge Road, 60 as you come in from the 72, Route 72, going to 50 past the school, 50 going out Hoods Road, sorry, yeah, and 60 coming in off on Hoods Road coming into Mount Summers.
I'll just be the last one for Lakewood.
No change. It's all 50. Apart from the main road.
You know, again, whether we need to do it or not is another matter, but what we're suggesting there is, again, the 30k within the likes of Torbay, Trent Place and Ludlow, Waterton Point, the same, and then round the likes of the lifestyle blocks up the top, with 70 being the main drag in until you get to just past the last, well, where it changes to 50 now basically, and then 50 in for the rest of it, and similarly coming in on Huntington Avenue, make that 50 all the way in.
Councillor Brown?
In the previous committee, we just named some new roads, new subdivision in Lake Hood. It's going in there, I think, near Huntington Ave. Should that be done at the same time? Because by the time that gets done...
Well, that's what we're saying, with Huntington Avenue being there 50, you've got the Village Green coming, there's 2 roads coming in from the Village Green.
And should they be 50 is probably the question. But
30.
Yeah, when they come in, we'll make certain that they're 50 or 30, whichever it happens to be.
But you'd have to re-gazette them, won't you, or not?
I'm not quite sure how it goes about when we bring in new streets as such. I'm not sure just what the process is or how it actually, who does it, whether it's ourselves or the developers. I'm not quite sure.
Or we've got the plan, would you do it now or through this process?
There's no reason why we can't. If we know that they're going to be vested with us and we know their names already. Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, and through you perhaps to Mr McCann. Mr McCann, that's a really good point. Do we have a policy in place that all new subdivisions are going to come in at consistent speed limits if they are of a certain design? Or is that a policy that we do need to form?
I'll look into that and check and see what the process is for that. I'm sure there is a process with environmental services, but I'll look into it and find out. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Martin and Brian. 613 Poplar Road Seal Extension. Well, the only question is, when is this going out for consultation?
Whenever you wish it to go, we can make the changes that you've suggested today, and we could put it out. The only problem I see is that we've got the elections coming up, obviously. Do we want it in the public arena whilst the elections are going on? I would suggest not. So perhaps if we aim to put it out late October, early November, and go from there.
Yes, I think that's the best idea. Might be a bit of politicking on speed limits on certain roads. Councillor Brown? Road subsidised, Poplar Road Seal Extension. No comment. Footpaths. And footpath spraying. contracts. Councillor Reveley.
Yeah, the footpath spraying, that seems to be a perennial problem with the lichen, and that's getting on some of those footpaths now. They're almost impossible to walk on, which is being a problem because nobody's walking on them, they're walking on the road. So the people aren't upsetting the lichen. So is the spray we're using not useful enough?
They're testing the various sprays and yeah, it's a problem area. The lichen, unless you're walking on it regularly, will get itself established. The sprays can kill it to a degree, but you really have to spend quite a bit of time. My understanding is that you spray, you should come back, let it dry off a little bit, then give it a good scrub, and then come back and spray it again. Now, there's not too many contracting organisations that are geared up that particular way to handle that type of activity.
Thank you, the press, who are leaving. You've reported our meetings for the last 3 years, so thanks very much. Yeah, Councillor Ronson.
Just regarding the lichen, it's a big problem in Tynwald and parts of Tynwald too, and I've often wondered, when you look at it, it's actually an accumulation of basically dirt that it's growing on, and I've often wondered whether, years ago you'd get a little Fergie tractor with a big bristle brush that actually cleaned the footpath, and I think that is part of the problem, is that the lichen is growing on accumulations of dirt, just like it was at the corner of Seafield Road and Bridge Street, when that got cleaned up. But it's accumulations of dirt, and then the lichen's getting its roots into that dirt. And I've wondered whether it would be worth trialling an area, having a clean of it first, and I think probably 75% of the problem would go.
Yeah, you could be right, and it could be well worthwhile trialling that, and we'll have a look into it.
Upcoming tenders. Councillor Brown.
We normally get a value attached to the tender when it's awarded.
Those are the contracts awarded.
Yeah. My mistake in that regard then. But as far as the Beach Road, it's around the 360 or 390,000, 360,000, 390,000, somewhere in that area. And the lighting operation and maintenance 3-year contract is about the 1.2, 1.3 million. 3 years contract, yeah.
Are we getting good long life from the new bulbs compared to the old ones?
They've only been in 2 months or so, so I'm not too sure.
Supposed to be 5 years or something. Yeah. Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair. Brian, so back to that LED lights, has that tender price gone down on that maintenance because we've got LEDs now?
No, it hasn't. We're governed by the contract the council has with Meridian for the power side of things, and that hasn't gone down. And we're sort of caught between two places at present. In the long term, we would trust that the maintenance contract will go down, but we haven't seen that at this stage in the pricing. And as far as the energy is concerned, we've got more lights out there, and therefore the kilowatts based for each light is very similar. And my understanding is that the Meridian contract is based around the kilowatt usage as opposed to anything else. So we're waiting to see, as time goes on, whether that kilowatt usage drops back and therefore the actual expense drops back.
Did you, Donna, do you have something?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, we have approximately 2,500 kilometres of roads in this district, and I'm looking at the upcoming tender for Thompson's Track, and this time for widening and rehabilitation. I'm wondering, will this be the final Thompson's Track contract? Because got a lot of other roads to work on.
No, we've still got areas that will need to be widened, and there's still areas that I think, depending on whether we get to widen them first or whether they get to the fail stage and we actually rehabilitate them. I'm not quite sure which way it'll go. We'll wait and see. But as you well know, from Rakaia through to the end of Mayfield Valletta Road, it's something like 50 k's, and each time we do a rehab, the maximum we do would be 3 k's, something in that vicinity. So it's quite a long period of time.
So supplementary, with 50 kilometres being the total and we're doing 3 kilometres at a time, roughly how much have we done?
I got a feeling that would be around about the 15 to 20k.
Councillor Everly?
Probably in amongst that, you've done nearly all the stuff which was in pretty poor condition. There's not much poor condition road down there now. Biggest trouble you have is people trying to drive 100 on it. They're just slow.
No further comments on upcoming tenders? Vandalism? Methven Community Board minutes have been circulated. Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. Just a question, has there been any workshop dates organised for the drinking water, wastewater? It was suggested in the meeting, and I don't know if it's filtered through to you. No? I'll have a check. I'll have a chat afterwards about that.
Sorry, through the chair,
Okay.
Joint roading reference group meetings. They're there for your perusal. There's no motions coming forward from either of them.
Mr Chairman, I just have a question on page 33, the new appointment to the Committee for the Road Safety. Absolutely applaud the recommendation that we should have a FENS representative, but wondering what that means for the terms of reference and if there should be a recommendation to change the terms of reference as we're appointing a new member.
Could be in the new term of council whether we continue on. Yes. It'll be up to the new council whether they want to continue with them, I guess. Councillor Rawlinson?
Thank you. Just on the minutes from the road safety meeting, I found it rather concerning, interesting but concerning on the road safety reporting 7.1. The last point was data for the Somerton Road warning sign is showing some increases in speed being recorded as vehicles approach the intersection, which makes me wonder how on earth do we teach people that that is a dangerous intersection? All the mechanisms have been put there, and yet data shows that they're speeding up to that intersection more than they did before. It's a big concern.
Through you, Mr Chairman, if anybody watched the AM news this morning, Greg Murphy was giving a brief summary of how he felt Vision Zero and the government's proposals should be tackled. It was rather interesting, so if you get a chance, have a look at that. Answers some of your queries, I think.
Also, at the bottom of page 39, our contractor outlines some new methodology regarding pavement failures, potholes in brackets. From what one of the transport operators said, it was definitely an improvement of what they were doing. It was more expensive, but that has been the biggest bugbear of councillors' lives, is that pothole repairs in public's mind don't last as long as they should. So this new methodology, transport operators were quite impressed, so that's good.
And as a result of that, Anando, our roading engineer, commented this morning at a meeting that we had that CRMs are well down for sealed roads at present.
Good, really good.
But our expenditure's probably gone up a bit.
Still, it's something that we have needed to do. We've consistently polled poorly on our roading maintenance, even though we've been spending a lot of money. So if it, in people's minds, we are using a better mythology and they're lasting longer, it's good. Any further business? If not, I'll declare the normal part, open part of our meeting closed. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you for the staff that have attended. That's the final service delivery for this term. Thank you, Brian. You're a major part, and Martin, and Andy, of our service delivery, and Neil, of course. If we go into committee